And good evening, everyone, and welcome to OTF Connects. My name is Susan Watt, and I'll be hosting tonight. And our presentation this evening is on problem solving in mathematics with Crystal Lake, who is an experienced presenter with OTF Connects. And I know that all of us from right across the province of Ontario are looking forward to learning a little more about this really important and very current. We've been talking so much about mathematics, and I've been looking at Crystal's presentation. I know she's got lots of really great stuff to talk to us about. So welcome, Crystal. I'm going to turn my microphone off. Welcome, everyone, and we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay. So I'm just going to cut right to it, and I'm going to get started just because last time I did a session, I ran out of time. So can someone just give me a thumbs up or let me know if you can hear me okay? Oh, sounds good. Okay, good. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to really focus on my presentation, and at moments throughout I'll be stopping and looking at the chat. But if you really have a question, it's important to use the hands up tool that will bing to me so that I can, so I'll know to stop. I just don't want to run out of time. I have a fair bit to get through today. So here we go. So I'm talking today about problem solving in mathematics, and just for those of you that are on Twitter, I have Twitter here, and you can see that it's at CLake04. So feel free to follow me, and if you have any additional questions, email is always good too, but I get notifications for both. So here we go. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm a numeracy consultant with the Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario. And we kind of go from where Algonquin, Lakeshore, and the Limestone Board ends, so just outside Kingston, and we go all the way to the Quebec border. And then I like to say we hug Ottawa. So I'm in my 10th or 11th year of teaching. It's kind of funny that I'm a math consultant, but I don't really know my number because there's permanent and non-permanent stuff. But anyway, so I'm about 10 or 11 years in, and I've had experiences from K to 10 in the classroom, and I've also had experiences as a special education resource teacher. So lots of different roles, and I even did a little stint, about 3 months as a technology educator with our board. So had a lot of interesting and fun positions, and I did put a picture of myself here. And that's just because whenever I go to these other presentations, I like to kind of picture who's talking to me. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll carry on here. So now I want to know just a little bit about you and what grades you teach. So if you can just use one of the clip art symbols. So remember, it's near the bottom. It looks like a picture and just kind of indicates so that I can make sure that I'm covering lots here. So okay, cool. And if you've got multiple grades, that's fine too. Yeah, so, yeah, okay. Well, there's lots of participants again tonight, so that's exciting. And we have a wide range. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that there's pertinent information for everyone. So we've got quite a few other positions, which is good too. And I hope that, my hope, I mean, we've been doing problem solving for quite some time now. So my hope is that you will walk away with at least one new things of learning. So Dan, are you on? Okay, so there is a toolbar beside the
Crystal, he's all set. And Crystal, I'm going to say don't worry about those kind of questions. I'll worry about the sort of logistics and helping people with the tools, if that's okay.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to move on, guys. Got an idea. We've got quite a range, so I'm hoping that you'll walk away with something. So our goal for today, so I want to quickly review what problem solving is, just so we're all on the same page, and briefly talk about the benefits to our students. I want to review some maybe potential rules that you might be able to use in problem solving, discuss the different problem solving strategies, view examples of ways to incorporate the 3 parts lesson plan. So things that we can do for the 3 different parts of a lesson plan. Just briefly touch on some different problem solving frameworks that are out there, and then just dabble into a little bit of how technology can fit into and support student voice while problem solving. And if you really are interested in the technology piece, I do have another session that I'm leading on the 26th that is all on technology in math. So that'll be an interesting one for sure. So, okay, so I want to start off with this idea of math phobia. So I feel like we live in a math phobic society, you know. Culture, like our society has accepted that it's okay to not be good at math. And so that's a bit of a struggle. Math anxiety is just something that we see often when it comes to problem solving in mathematics. And so a researcher, Mark Ashcraft, just defines math anxiety as a feeling of tension, apprehension, or fear that interferes with math performance. And I did a session on mindset as well. We really need to make this shift. And you'll see here, there's one of those the little comics I see often, and just that idea. Are you taking any foreign language classes this year? Yes, math. But it doesn't have to be that way, and a lot of problem-solving strategies and activities can really help with that. We hear a lot about student voice and math talk in the classroom, so that's a piece that can help with that. And then over here, I've kind of got my menu and my bill. So I'd like to just talk about the idea that when we're in a restaurant, you know, and you ask them to split the bill and they don't, sometimes someone will say, oh, you do this, I'm not a math person, you know, just tell me how much I owe you. But when I think about that, I don't think that we would ever say, hey, here's the menu, can you just pick something out for me? I can't read. You know, I'm not good at reading. So it's kind of like it's accepted in society that it's okay to not be good at math, but there's still that stigma with reading. And I think that we need to shift this math phobic society. So so I have a little video that was compiled by Dan Meyer, who's kind of one of he's a lead researcher and educator in mathematics. He does a lot of different things in math that are a lot of fun and engaging. He really has moved away from the textbook and shifted more to more practical real-life challenges, I guess. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on him a little bit later. But Susan, there we go. So Hollywood Hates Math, and it's just a little YouTube clip. It's about 2 minutes long, and I'm just going to do a little forewarning. This isn't something I would show my class. This is something just to kind of lighten the mood. It's fun, and there is one part that's a little inappropriate. But yeah, so my students love Dan Meyer too. He compiled this, so I'm not taking credit for this at all. But if you want, just take a moment and kind of get Hollywood's perception of mathematics. So I'm going to turn off my mic, and in about a couple minutes we'll return. If you come back, just give me a check mark when you've returned. So again, just give me a thumbs up if when you return. It's just supposed to lighten the mood, the video. An old laptop. Oh, good. I'm glad a lot of you had an opportunity to watch it. Definitely interesting when we think about the perception of math. Maybe society doesn't see academic math is as relevant. Yeah, maybe because of the way it's being taught. Definitely, I think that if we think about how math is traditionally taught to the way it is now, there has been a shift. So, yeah. So, anyway, so I just wanted to give you an idea that the reality is that Hollywood perceives math as challenging, hard, and genetic, which, by the way, math is not genetic. And with a lot of the research with growth mindset, we know that that's not the case. But definitely questions about the instruction of mathematics, and there has been a change. And I'm going to talk about some of those changes right now. So it looks like most of you had an opportunity to watch it, so I am going to continue on here with the presentation. Okay, so just like a little overview here about problem solving. So, so we know that the primary goal of problem solving is to make sense of mathematics. We want students to explore, develop, and apply their understanding of mathematical concepts. And this is what we call teaching through problem solving. So that idea when our students are learning a new concept in math, that's teaching through. So we're going to do a problem solving activity and they're going to learn something new, whether it be a new way to solve the problem or just kind of deriving something for the first time. And then we have problems that kind of guide students through the development of inquiry or problem-solving process and strategies. So it's the teaching about problem solving. So this is where we really emphasize and talk about the different strategies and the process to getting there. But what's important to know is that problem solving is just more than just a vehicle to teach and reinforce math knowledge. It really just enhances the logical reasoning. And I know that we have had a lot of conversations just in the edu world or in education around our 21st century learners. And what's important to remember and to keep in mind is that the students we have today, we're preparing them for jobs that really don't exist. And so if we're preparing them for that, we need to make sure that our students are critical thinkers, that they can solve problems, and they can think critically about complex issues and new situations and know how to use the information and knowledge that they have already. What is also really important in our, what document is it? The Effective Guides to Instruction. I'm not sure if you've seen those, but okay, sorry, I just was sidetracked because I saw my name. So, yeah, as Marian Small says, we need to prepare them for the world we live in today, but problem solving needs to kind of be the bulk of our math lesson. You know, we need to go beyond doing just a problem of the week. It needs to be the main approach of teaching. And just so you know, like, we have been doing this for a while now. If we move to the next slide here, you'll see, I took a little bit from the curriculum, but this is the curriculum that was released in 2005, which is 11 years ago. But it really is a tweak of it was only a tweak of the 1999 curriculum. So when they talk about problem solving and they talk about this new math, I don't know how new, if we can count 17 years as new anymore. But the effective guides that I just spoke of are resources that are just as old as this, that provide lots of problem-solving activities in there. So, so I just kind of wanted to pull out a couple things. You know, as Ontario educators, we kind of are saying, yeah, I'm going to teach and I'm going to follow this curriculum. And in the front matter, which is an area that we don't always have an opportunity to look at and explore, there are kind of two parts on page 24 that support this idea of problem solving. So I'm just going to just kind of point them out to you. So in order to learn mathematics and to apply their knowledge effectively, students must develop a solid understanding of mathematical concepts. Research and successful classroom practices have shown that an investigative approach with an emphasis on learning through problem solving and reasoning best enables students to develop the conceptual foundation they need. And teachers need to use rich problems and present situations that provide a variety of opportunities for students to develop mathematical understanding through problem solving. This is not to say that problem solving is the only thing we need to do. We need to make sure that there's a balance, but we need to do problem solving more than just once a week. It's kind of the message that I was getting from resources that are dated 10 years ago, but very relevant to Ontario. And it's also important to know this. So what students are doing now in first year university is what I was doing in my third year university. And just an idea of numbers, like, I mean, I've been teaching for 10 years, so you could probably get an estimate of what my age is. So our expectations in Ontario are very high. What we're doing in mathematics or what we're doing in education is sought after around the world, not just in Canada, but around the world. So we have high expectations, but we're continuing to focus on wanting to grow more in mathematics. So when I am doing problem solving with my class, I give them some rules to follow. So I just want to let you know, so a few summers back, like 2 or 3 years ago, I attended a session, an OTF session in Toronto with Marian and she posted these problem solving rules that she used with her class. And I thought it was brilliant. She gives these rules, the kids know what the rules are, she follows them when problem solving, and I felt it really helps and changes the classroom environment. So these are the rules that she follows. So respond to students' questions with a question of your own. Never give a student the first step. Never touch a student's manipulatives, and never touch students' writing utensil. But first and foremost and always, she just indicated break any and all of the above rules when you know what's best for a particular student. And Mary Kay does some amazing sessions, and I follow her on Twitter, and she's just got so much to offer. So yeah, she has a session coming up in May, so if you have an opportunity to go, I strongly encourage it. But what I liked about these was it was important to make sure your students know the rules. You have to be transparent with your students. If they know the rule, then they'll learn to follow it and learn to accept it. If you have these rules in your head and you're just going to follow them, students might not understand why every time they ask you a question, you're not just giving them the answer, because that's what they're used to. They're used to us just providing them an answer when they don't know what to do, thus creating somewhat a helpless generation at times. So it's important for them to know the rules, and this way they won't be as reliant on you. And I think that by doing this, when we do problem solving, we have to make sure we're creating a culture that normalizes mistakes and embraces risks and thrives off of challenges. So we need to do this to kind of push away the math phobia. So yeah, so I'm just wondering if any of you have any rules or procedures that you use when you problem solve. Actually, and just kind of, I'm going to go back, sorry. That idea is never give a student the first step. I was in a class just the other day, and the student or the teacher, we were doing this measurement activity, and it was in a grade 2 class, and the question was, who has the longer couch? And we had Bob's couch is 12 notebooks long, and Leah's couch is 13 pencils long. And the pencils and notebooks were different sizes, but it's your non-standard unit. And my whole purpose was for the students to use the non-standard unit to figure out whose was longer, and she came out and just said, the ruler's here, you should be using the rulers, and you should start with this. And it really no longer became a lesson on measurement, it then became a lesson on 2-digit addition, which was too bad. And I think sometimes we know that using a ruler would be beneficial, but in this case it took away from the measurement with a non-standard unit learning goal that we had set out. But this is something like we learned from it and we talked about it. And just, breaking the rules. I did have a student in my class when I was problem solving before, and he was autistic, and I'm sure that many of your classes have autistic students in them, and problem solving when it was a really open-ended question was really difficult for him. So I would just, after I assigned the question, he knew that I would come over to him and we would talk it through to make it less open-ended for him so that he could still problem solve like his peers, but just have it a little bit more concrete where he could handle it. So we break and adjust the rules for particular students that need that. So do you have any rules or procedures that you use when you problem solve in your classroom? And if not, do any of these rules appeal to you? Feel free to add it to the chat, or you can use text on a page. Either or is good with me. Yeah, using markers. Yeah, and we celebrate the mistakes, yes, because sorry, I just got sidetracked by the positive norms in Math Classroom. Yeah, and we had a discussion about the norms of collaboration, and that it's okay to, you know, not always agree with the people in your group, and we have to. There's a process for that, and just because you don't agree with something on a math paper doesn't mean it has to stick with you. You need to have that challenge with each other. I like that, Holly, giving them as little information as possible. And yeah, I think it's important because the textbook gives us all the information they need, and that's where, Holly, I'm sure you've seen some of Dan Meyer's stuff, but that's where his philosophy came down to. So. Yeah. So I like that you guys have lots of ideas here. This is a very great collaborative group. But I'm going to stick with things. So what I'm going to do, I thought I would start off by just showing you just some strategies. And these are just some problem-solving strategies. There are more. I just chose 10 to talk about today. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. It's really hard not to look at it. No. Okay, so the problem-solving strategies. So these aren't something that they have to use every time, but sometimes if we don't know where to start with a problem, these strategies can help us get started. And sometimes we can solve a problem just on our own, and we don't need to use these. Sometimes we use a certain strategy more often than not. And I think that these are just good reminder that students can just have these in their toolkit to use. So first and foremost, look for important words in the problem. So whether you highlight them or you write them down, you underline them, just make sure you know what to do. So the purpose of highlighting the important words is just to remind me of what do I need to figure out and what information do I know. The second strategy is look for a pattern. So can I see something happening over and over again? And does this help me? Now, what's interesting is that I find that sometimes there are some strategies that we tend to use more easily and then others not so much. So a strategy I found that we use often is guess and check. And I think that when we use these strategies, it's really important to talk about the emphasis of the process. I've had the opportunity to score for EQAO for a number of years, and the guess and check method can still get you a code 30 in many cases, and not that we're just teaching for that purpose, but if a student's doing some trial and error and then eventually gets to the right answer, nothing wrong with that. So just try and answer, and does that make sense? Does it work? Did it help you? Great. Use that strategy. When we don't know where to start, sometimes we have to make a guess. Yeah, I'm getting to working backwards, Farah. It's on the next slide. Use a table or a chart. I tend to go to this a lot in patterning, a T-chart, but it might just help you organize your information better or visually have a representation that makes sense to you, and then moving on to drawing a picture. So, yeah, and I think that, so these aren't an order that we do them. These are just 5 different strategies that you could use. If a student doesn't know where to start, maybe they can start with a guess and check, or maybe they can start by drawing a picture. There's no right order to do these in. It's just something to think about. So, Farah, I didn't put act it out as one of them. As you know, there's many strategies that we have here, but these are some. So draw a picture is really important, but it's also important to have a conversation with your students about mathematical pictures. I know that in some boards or in some areas, using pictures, numbers, and words was a strategy that they had kids do, or almost like a framework. Like, so when you solve it, use pictures, numbers, and words. Well, I was new to a school, and I was teaching a grade 3 class at the time, and I took a question. We were doing one of our first problem-solving exercises, and I was new to the school, so I didn't know their previous experiences. I didn't know their teachers, and I didn't know kind of where they were coming from. So I just kind of gave them a problem just to kind of see where they were at with problem solving. And I think their previous teacher used pictures, numbers, words, because the question that I used was, do you know anyone who's lived for 1,000 days? Again, right out of the curriculum. And it was really good. I saw a lot of great things happening, but this one group, immediately, I remember I'm with the Catholic board, this one group immediately were like, yeah, I know God, and you know, he's 1,000 days. And I said, okay, but how old would he be then if he were 1,000 days? Well, it doesn't matter because it fits the thing. So then they proceeded to draw a picture of butterflies and flowers and what they thought God looked like, and it really didn't support their mathematical thinking. So I spent some time on our mathematical diagram. I think that these strategies are both, either helping them understand the problem or helping them get started. Sometimes if they don't know where to start, then looking at the problem and digging a little bit deeper to figure out what you need to do. And sometimes you're like, well, I know that I need to do something with these, so it adds up to this, so then the guess and check might come in handy. So these are just kind of like something that they could have in their toolkit when they don't know exactly how to get started, or when we are taking things up in like a consolidation, it might be something that we refer to and show that there's different strategies that people use so that, you know, you can come to a final solution, but I'll use it and I'll take different approaches, and that's okay. So just to kind of let them know that it's okay to have different approaches to things. Are we good so far? It's really awkward. These presentations are very different because you're just talking to yourself, and no one else has microphones, so I hear nothing. So thank you so much for the little thumbs up there. I didn't know you could do that in chat, actually, so good. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on with a few more strategies here. Just that, again, this can be like a toolkit. I used to have these on an anchor chart up in my room, and whenever a kid said, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start, I would just say, okay, well, let's look at our toolbox. You know, what are things that we could do? Where do you want to start? So one that I like is working backwards, which I think, was it you, Farah, that mentioned that before? Anyway, someone mentioned working backwards, and it's a great tool. So can I start at the end of the question? Will it help me work it out, and will my answer work? I really like keep it simple. So simplifying the numbers, you know, instead of using really big numbers, let's just use easier numbers, figure out how to solve the problem, and then add in the more challenging numbers later, just so I get an idea of what the process is supposed to look like. Think logically. So can I tell something about the answer right away? Do I know, is it going to be a big number? Is it going to be smaller? Can I, you know, is there information that I don't need? That sort of stuff. Just think about it. What do I need to do to solve this problem? Can I get rid of anything? Can I get rid of answers that are incorrect? So that might be something. Thinking logically might be a tool or something that you use when, okay, I don't know what that is, but thinking logically might be a tool you use when you are using multiple choice. Using manipulatives, again, I'm a strong believer in this, and just so you know, I just did a session with the high school, we did a session with our grade 7, 8, and 9 teachers, and grade 9 teachers were talking about the use of algebra tiles and how they really use them to help deliver a large portion of their teaching. So we do use manipulatives and carrying on into high school, and I think that it's something that we need to continue to use and get to the point where students feel very comfortable using manipulatives and pulling manipulatives or tiles or whatever it is that they need that will help them find the answer without us actually prompting them. And so that means we have to have manipulatives readily in our room. And then the last one could be using a formula. You know, is there some sort of formula that's going to help us solve this problem? And will this help you solve your answer? So again, these are just strategies, some that you may post on the wall, just to have there as a place to start. So what's a strategy that your students use often, and what's a strategy that they don't use enough? So again, you can add this to this slide or just write it in the chat, but just kind of a little catch up. So what's a strategy that you think your students use a lot right now, and one that they don't use enough? And feel free to add one that I didn't have there. So like someone mentioned, act it out. There's a ton of strategies that they could use. So, and feel free to hop on the microphone if you want and share an answer, or type it in chat there. So. That's great to hear, VJ, using manipulatives often. great. Is it, BJ, is it prompted by you, or do you think that they will pick it on their own? Oh, that is great, BJ. That just shows that they've been exposed to lots of manipulative use. Working backwards is challenging, and I think it depends on your grade, but I think sometimes when we get to 7 and 8, sometimes we have no choice but to work backwards. So that's awesome. Oh yeah, use of number lines for addition and subtraction. That's great, Michelle, and I'm not sure what grade you're in, Michelle, but that's also a really good tool when we get to 7 and 8, using the number line for integers, so it's great. Okay, so I like that there's so many strategies here that we're using, so it sounds like we've got some pretty great educators in this room. So I'm going to carry on. So I'm sure you've all, or most of you, or I'm sure you've all heard of the 3-part lesson plan. It comes in many, many, many different names. I'm just going to give a really brief overview of what it is, and then I'm going to give you things that we can do for kind of each portion that kind of play into the problem-solving bit, and that get our students to think critically or answer into the problem. So, 3-part lesson plan. So there's 3 parts. It can be either your before, during, after, or your activation, explore, and consolidation, or your minds on, working on it, debrief, and they can be intermingled and switched around in any manner, in that your yellows are the first part, your greens are the second part, and the blue is the last part. So in the before section, it really is just the getting started phase. It allows your students to prepare for the mathematics lesson, usually in just a very brief but engaging task. And an example of that, if you're doing a fractions lesson, maybe you might start and ask your class, what fraction of females are in your home? And they're just quickly going to go around, so they're thinking about fractions, their minds are on, they're engaged, everyone can, contribute, and then you can get into the real bulk of it. Maybe you're taking a problem, or you're doing like a little checking for understanding to see, where are they with this, so that I have an idea of where I need to go. So that's just some examples, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. Part 2 is our during phase, so students really work on a problem. They're going to inquire, they're going to reflect, ask questions, and clarify their understanding throughout the lesson. During this phase, the teacher asks a lot of questions that really prompt student thinking and have them explain and justify what the thought process is. What's really, really, really important is during this middle phase, the green phase, or the second phase, or part 2, it's really important that the teacher is actively circulating the room and seeing what the students are doing, looking for a variety of representations, and just getting a feel of where the learning's going. I always say that the teacher is almost like a tour guide when it comes to problem solving, and you know kind of where the end result is without telling them what the key sites are that they need to go see. You just need to kind of guide them back that way. So, and if you're using the rules that I suggested before, then what kind of questions can you provide them that'll get them thinking about things in just a different light? So we want to make sure that we're actively circulating during that second portion. However, sometimes in a lesson, it's not always some sort of exploratory activity. Sometimes it can be, but it's teacher-led, and it just depends on what you're doing. But when it comes to problem solving, the hope is that there's some sort of deeper thinking question that's going to provoke student learning. And then the after phase for your consolidation is what I think we hear a lot. So the teacher and the students reflect about what they've done, and they talk about the various ways in which they've solved the problem. There might be discussion about efficiency or what would save time, but we're talking about the mathematical concepts that are learning. We're talking about the ideas and the vocabulary. But what's really important about the consolidation is we're bringing the student learning back to those learning goals. What was the purpose of this lesson? What was I hoping to get out of them? So say you were trying to do something on measurement, but a student used algebra. while that might be a neat way, that way they did it really doesn't relate to measurement or my expectations, so I'm not going to highlight it this time. But I might talk to them on the side and say it was a really interesting approach, but we don't have to show everything. So if you were to do what they call a band show, it's not a show and tell. Not everyone has to do it. And you should be kind of strategic about the order that happens in this third part, and strategic about who's sharing. You don't need 3 people that did it the exact same way to share their thinking, right? Maybe you just have one group. And you can mention that a couple other groups did it this way. So it's just really important that throughout the green part, we see what the students are doing so that we can reflect in more of a, I don't know what the word is, in just a really concise way, purposeful, I suppose. So here's my big question to you, and I've asked this many times, and it provokes great discussion, but which part of the 3-part lesson plan is the most important, and why? Again, feel free to hop on the microphone or write your answer in the chat. So Farah says consolidation. Mine's on to get their attention. Okay, lots of consolidation so we can learn from one another. All parts. Yeah, Trudy, I have a hard time deciphering or picking one. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's definitely advantages to each of the different parts. They all play a role in it. The consolidation really helps us to define and bring everything together and get back to those learning goals. However, the working on it, if we're normalizing mistakes and allowing them to take risks, and sometimes the true learning can happen during the working on it or the middle portion of it. So it really depends on how you look on things. So I just thought that that's a good question to kind of get us thinking about things. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the 3 different parts, and I'm going to provide you with some tasks or activities or ways to look at things in each of the sections. So here we go. So I'm going to start with Minds On, obviously. And Minds On can be a lot of fun. So we can use read alouds. I'm sure that many of you have used read alouds, and I did have a link up there just with the site. It's a Goodreads site, and there is a great list there. Another really great resource if you're looking for a list of resources are resources by Marilyn Burns. Marilyn Burns is someone that we've heard a lot about, and she has a variety of these books. So this one here is an example of a 2-3. She's got a K1, 2-3, I think a 4-5. She's got all the way up to grade 8 for sure that I know of. So this book here is really good because she lists a variety of read alouds, and she does a little summary of the concepts being learned, and then it's almost like a narrative of how she used it in her lesson and what it looked like. She's got questions that she asked. She's got student responses and examples of student work. So if you are interested in using read alouds in a more, like, an effective manner, more than just reading the story, like to truly connect it, I strongly encourage you to look up Marilyn Burns. You might know her because she wrote the book The Greedy Triangle. But Susan, do you have that link for the good
So there's
read?
tons of links on that section of the slide. Do you want me to post all of them or one at a time?
Oh, right. I did have a ton of links. Okay.
Well, I'll put them all on. I mean, and then people can. I've got them sort of sorted. Let me do that, and then they're there.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, guys. This is a really exciting one. I just found out about a bunch of things. So we mentioned that the use of video. That's why I have the YouTube thing here. But use of video is a great way, and so a couple sites for that, and she's got it here. So one of them is 101 questions. So people, educators around the world will post a video, and then you watch the video and kind of pose a question underneath it. The other day I was on there and they had 2 people having like a hot dog eating contest, but it was like a growing pattern. So they started off with 1 each, and then 2 each, and then 3 each. It was like kind of disgusting but funny at the same time. So what's really good about that is that the educators put what kind of questions they could ask in their math class. So it just gives you an idea of how you could use the video. As we mentioned before, Dan Meyer's video. So there's a longer link in here that's a Google Doc, and what it is a spreadsheet of all of Dan Meyer's 3F lessons. And another one who's one of our own Ontario educators is Cal Pierce, who does a lot of work with technology, 3-part lesson plans. I think he's from the Windsor area. He does OTF sessions. He is great. And actually, this is what I have here, Farah. This is a picture right here. So the next part, so if you're not using video, you can use pictures. And so I've kind of got my hand going around here. This picture is from a website called Which One Doesn't Belong. So it's wodb.ca. And so you look at it and you have a discussion about which one of these spinners doesn't belong. Yeah, Tap into Teen Minds is for Kyle as well, who's one of our own. He's doing lots. He's a Google educator and an Apple educator, and he's great. Yeah, and the Ontario Educational Resource Bank has lots of really great ideas too. But we'll take a minute here and we'll look at this one here where my hand's going around. Which one of these 4 spinners doesn't belong, and why? What do you think? Which one of these spinners doesn't belong? Ah, there's no green in the top right. Okay. Why the top left, Nick? Okay, so I was thinking, like there's lots of different answers, but it really, really, really gets discussion going, because right now I think we have 3 or 4 different answers with different reasons. So again, they've got a variety of things. They've got shapes, they've got things with numbers. So it's a really great Canadian site. So that one was Which One Doesn't Belong. This other one right here, I took this picture here from a site called Visual Patterns, and there are a ton of patterns on this site. No, there's no right or wrong answer. It really just provokes thinking, which is what we kind of wanted to do in the Minds On. And that's really good if you're doing work with student voice and accountable talk. You know, maybe it's this first one here because there's 4 equal. It's split into 4 equal sections where this one, and this one aren't. So it really depends on how you look at it. But there's no right or wrong answer. It's just thinking about things just a little bit differently, you know? Okay, good, Farrah. So this one here is visual patterns. So if you're doing anything with patterning, there's a variety of patterns there, which is really good for getting students to reflect and work on patterns. And yeah, so the Minds On is a great opportunity to get our students to think critically. And the last one I want to tell you about is Estimation 180. So that's this site here. So you could look at it and come with a question. So maybe you're doing something on area, and the question is, how many cheese puffs or cheese balls will it take to cover the white plate? And so then the students are really having to think and estimate, use what they have, and try and figure it out. So this one too, this Estimation 100, there's a portion where you can go online and have your students respond, but you don't have control over what they're saying, and the responses are visible. So you might just be wary. You might want to just take a snippet of the picture and use it in that sense, but really great site. But again, like, we just want to get our students thinking about things and turning their minds on. But there's more traditional ways too. Is you could do some sort of think, pair, share. You could take up homework or take up a question. doing a checking for understanding just to see, you know, are we ready to move on to a new concept? And that's kind of what in this next slide, this teacher here does. So the video is called My Favorite No. And I'm going to talk about it after, but Susan, if you can put the link in, I think it was about 5.5 minutes, this video, but it's an amazing one. If you haven't seen it, it's really great. If you are a coach or any sort of educator, although it is, or sorry, any sort of consultant, although it is from the States, there's guiding questions that you can ask on the side if you're doing any sort of professional development. But what we're going to do is we're going to take about 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes. I'm going to have you watch the video in your own browser, and then just again, when you come back, just give me a check mark to let me know that you're back. And I'm just going to turn off my mic so that you don't hear me talking in the background. Okay, so just looking at my list here, I've got 22 people that are finished the video. So I think I might continue on, but there's just a few things I wanted to talk to you about in regards to my favorite no. So there are things that I really like that she does. So I really like how she takes this. She goes through it and sorts through yes, no, but she takes the student work and she puts it in her own handwriting. That really takes not the ownership off the student, but students are like detectives and they can figure out whose handwriting is, and you don't ever want to be like pointed out that you're the one making the mistake. Although what I find that this minds-on activity that she does, the way she starts her lesson, is it really normalizes mistakes, because I like that she calls it her favorite no. And I also like that she highlights what she really likes first. And then I like how she has the students explain and discuss how come the math is done correctly. Because we often will ask, well, why do you think that's wrong? But how often do we say, okay, do you agree with this and why? So I like that she does those things. Just a little side note that we got into the chat here is that there are alternatives to spending. There are alternatives to spending a lot of money on clickers. I highly doubt that the clickers are $15,000. I think $1,500 might be of what she was kind of going at. But that being said, there are alternatives like clickers and that sort of thing. And if you are looking for alternatives, I'm just going to put a little plug in for my session that is on April 26th, where we're going to look at some technology in the classroom, and some of them are tools that that are free out there that we can use. So, but yeah, I like that idea. I find it's a really great video. If you like that strategy, she's got another one, and I'm not sure the name of it, but she has another one out there. It's on the same teaching channel, where she talks about, she looks at her summative tasks or tests, and instead of just giving them a grade, she highlights places where little mistakes were, and then she will, so then they know where they went wrong, but she doesn't tell them what they did, and they have to really go back, look at it, and try and figure out where they went wrong, so then students are thinking about it again. But again, this is a really just great example of a minds-on. The students were engaged, and then it could actually carry out and extend into the lesson. So the next portion is working on it. So, just the middle portion. And so for this, I'm really focusing on kind of three main areas. So I'm going to talk about open-rooted questions, open-ended questions, and parallel tasks. And if you're looking for more information too, just on word problems and open-ended answers, there's this monograph put out by the ministry, and actually 2011, but it's what works, and it's all on word problems, and there are just what the research tells us, there's strategies, how does problem solving help us, and ways to decode the problem and stuff like that. So if you're looking for some extra reading, this monograph is really great. So, what I've done is for each of the sections, so in this case I'm going to talk to you about open-rooted question. I've given an example of what an open-rooted question might look like in primary, junior, and intermediate. You have to remember that we do have kindergarten teachers in here too, so some of my primary I tried to make more kindergarten, and maybe I should have had a K section, but I consider kindergarten in the primary division. So, and then I've got examples as well for some of them. So these open-rooted, so the junior and the intermediate questions actually were from a bank of questions on OTS, or no, sorry, open-rooted. I used EQAO questions for the junior and intermediate. So as I said, I scored for EQAO in the past, and the scoring guides are all online, but they're all open-rooted. There's often more than one way to go about solving the problem, so I really like them because there's multiple entry points and multiple routes that you can do. But if you're looking for some more example questions and example materials, I just posted, there's just some links there, just so you know where to go on the EQAO site. Really great questions. So, so the one I want to look at in a little bit more detail is the primary one. So this one I did in kindergarten class. You might change the number as we go up in the grades to make it fit, and maybe it might not be monkeys in a tree. It could be anything else, but this is really just to see where students are at. There are a lot of key questions and curriculum expectations around number sense in kindergarten, specifically like that idea of numbers like counting on, stable order, and then you may even see them working towards and developing number sentences. However, that is not a requirement in kindergarten. And then the other two, I'll briefly go over them, but I want to show, I got some examples of the monkey one, and I just did another one this week, so it's one of my favorite problems to start problem solving in kindergarten or grade 1. But anyway, so the junior one is a Canadian television station shows 16 minutes of commercials every hour between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. every day. How many minutes of commercials are there on the station between 8 and 11 p.m.? 365 days, show your work. So that's a junior problem that you might see. And then there is a very typical question that you would see on the grade 9 EQAO assessment that talks about that idea of a plan. So cell phone plan. So plan A is $17 a month for the cell phone plus 25 cents a minute for additional talk time. Plan B is $20 a month for 15 cents a minute. Both plans include 200 minutes of talk time. Determine the difference in the total cost for the two cell phone plans that use 237 minutes of talk. So those are just two examples there are multiple ways to solve those answers, and you can see that if you look at the exemplars for EQAO. But what I'm going to show you is just some of the ways our little ones answered this. So, so the monkey problem. So there are 10 monkeys in a tree. There are 10 monkeys. Some of them are in the tree, and some of them are on the ground. Where are the monkeys? So this is a piece of student work. And again, after this, we talked about the importance of symbols in mathematics. But from this, the student was able to identify that there were 7 monkeys in the tree, and they counted. And then, well, I guess 8 if you count this one down here. So there's 8 monkeys in the tree and then 2 on the ground. But the teacher was able to observe that the student was doing a lot of thinking out loud, but did this independently. And while the student was solving this problem, I was doing some documentation for them. I do have other examples of the way this is done, but I had another class that used EduCreation, which is like an interactive recordable whiteboard. And so if you want, there is a link for this little video. It honestly is a minute. But this situation I just want to tell you about, it is doing Math Buddies in one of the schools that I support. And it was a grade 4 student working with a kindergarten student. The grade 4 was there as a guide to read the question to the students. I don't have the template on me, but the slides will be sent out, and you feel free to use it. All we did was draw a picture of a tree on there for the students, and then we just wrote out the problem. So, but the students don't even need the words, because I found like the kindergarten students didn't even refer to it. So I would just draw a tree for them. But you will have access to this, so feel free. But if you can take a moment, just a minute or something, I think it is, to check on the EduCreations link to see this. So a Nick is the grade 4 student reading it to the kindergarten student who solves the problem. And in this class, we talked about symbols in mathematics, so she doesn't draw monkeys. But I'm going to turn my microphone off here. So just a really quick explanation of the problem or the way it was done, but we learned a lot from that documentation. And sometimes as teachers, we can't be there to know how everything went. We don't know how much one person did in the problem, so that's what I like about the recordable whiteboard. But from that, we knew that the student could identify a certain amount in a tree. She could count on. She could, like, there was a lot that the student could do. So using the recordable interactive whiteboards helps document that learning, but it also shows that our students can problem solve at a really, really young age, and I think that when they're ready, we need to capture it and go with it. So a problem-solving situation in a kindergarten setting, if you do it, aligning with full-day kindergarten, just like they say, just about a maximum of 2 minutes per year of age. So you're looking at a maximum of 10 minutes. And really, the students, it doesn't take them that long. So I had a student yesterday, and I should have put this picture up, but just, it wasn't yesterday, it was Tuesday. It feels like yesterday, but the student actually ended up having 13 monkeys altogether. However, they could identify that there were 6 in the tree, they could identify that there were 7 on the ground, and they could tell me that there were 13 altogether. The students aren't reading the problem, so I took it as I knew a lot, and also the student the student counted 12, so there was that idea of stable order. So there's a lot of things that you can learn from these little problems. But just, I am going to continue on here, but EduCreations, if you want to know more about recordable interactive whiteboards and those sorts of apps, I'll be talking about those in my next technology session. So then we're on to open-ended questions, and actually, yeah, no, I'll talk about that. So the open-ended questions are things that allow a variety of learners to enter into the problem at a variety of levels. All these questions were, I feel like these ones were from a bank of resources on the OTF site, but I didn't put the link on this one, Susan. I'm really sorry, but OTF has a bunch of open-ended questions and a bunch of parallel tasks, and I thought I would utilize some of those tools on there. But yes, I really do like Debbie Diller's book too. Oh, perfect. So that's the parallel task one. So the resources are in and around there. So you can find them for the open-ended questions. I'm sorry about that. So actually, you know what? I think I used some from OTF and some from Marian Small's books, but these open-ended questions have a variety of answers. There's no one right way to do it, and there's multiple responses. And sometimes some of our students get anxious about this. I had a big discussion with a lot of teachers about open-ended questions, and they're really, really, really hard to give a concrete assessment mark. So one school was trying to collect baseline data for just a school improvement project, and so they thought, oh, we'll use the Marian Small questions, moderate them together as a group at the beginning, and then we'll do the same thing at the end. But when it came to moderating, they just decided that open-ended questions were really challenging to moderate, because how can you give one level or another, because there's so many different ways you could approach and answer the question. So just in talking about assessment, from that perspective, an open-rooted question allows the creativity in the process, but allows that concrete answer, and it's easier to give some sort of grade, I guess, if you'd like. Open-ended questions are really good for assessment for learning and as learning, to kind of see what kind of concepts they know. Again, we're going to be monitoring our students when they're doing this and walking around and seeing what they're doing. So a couple of examples. So the primary one is, there are tadpoles in a jar. The amount of tadpoles is more than 10, but less than 50. How many tadpoles could there be in the jar? And you could actually draw a jar and have them draw it in. And it'd be interesting to see how they group them and how they keep track of how many tadpoles are in there. Maybe you get a jar, have an actual jar, and you put marbles in it. Whatever it is that you want to do, whatever works for you in your class, there's lots of ways to do that. I like the marbles in a jar. It's a little bit more hands-on. The intermediate question is, the shape has the same area as this one. What could the dimensions be? So this allows students lots of options. They can go to a rectangle and just double the dimensions. They can try a trapezoid or a parallelogram. It's just really going to help identify the relationships involved in area, which is going to be really good. And the junior question, I have some examples for you on the next page, but a spinner lands on green, just a little more than red and a little less than blue. Draw a spinner and give a possible set of 10 outcomes. So just here we see there's two different spinners. This one over here has 8 sections, and this one over here has 10 sections. And this one here, the student went into percentages to kind of prove one has more and less than the other. And this one over here has 10 sections, so it's really easy to identify the 10 outcomes. Again, open-ended, so they both are correct but look different. So, you know, and this is where you can talk about, you could lead into a conversation about equal spacing. It depends on where you want to go with it, but it's really good. Welcome back, Christine. Also a number 2. And then the last kind of problem that I'm going to talk to you about, or type of question for problem solving, with parallel tasks. And Susan, oh, she's posted it again. I'm like, she just posted it. Again, all of these questions are from the OTF resource, which, just a little side note here, when I was looking at it, I found it really interesting. I grew up in the town of Brockville, so seeing this on there really threw me for a turn. But so these tasks, again, are really great for your special needs students. It allows students to enter into the problem no matter where they are, but it also can give students a challenge. And when we are thinking about mindset, it's really, really important that we challenge the students that tasks come easy. So whenever I talk about parallel tasks to people, they always say, yeah, but the kids are always going to pick the easiest one. And I said, that's fine, but you're going to say something to them like, you know what, that was really, really easy for you. Why don't we give you something that is going to give you a bit of a challenge? And then when you do things like that and you are giving them a challenge, the student's going to see, oh, Mrs. Lake really, really values, they might not say values, but Mrs. Lake really values when I'm working hard at something and when I'm challenged by it. So again, it's up to you how you use these, but they all lend themselves nicely to the middle portion of our problem solving with mathematics. And just, just examples. So I'll look at this one here just because it says Brockville. So the population of Brockville was reported as 21,957 in 2006. Sketch 3 ways to model this population using base 10 blocks. So this task really is going to have students work with base 10 blocks and sketch out the models there. So it's going to be really easy, and there's a specific number that goes right down to the ones. Now, the second one is just the population of Brockville was reported as blank in 2006. Sketch and describe 2 possible ways to model using base 10 blocks. Maybe that blank is a number you put in that's just a little bit more rounded, or maybe it's a number of their choice. And either one's right. There's nothing wrong with doing either of these because students are showing multiple ways to get the same answer. So again, there's lots that we can learn from this. And then we have kind of like another patterning algebra question with a constant rate of window washing for the third one. But again, all these tasks can be used in your room and there's a bank on OTF, which is great. Marian Small also has some good resources as well. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about making sure that we're challenging our students, but we also want our students to find success. We want to have them think about this problem-solving strategies before, and then use things. Like one of our strategies we talked about before was making it simpler, or picking easier numbers. So I think that this really helps and aligns with that strategy. So if you're providing it, then maybe it's something they'll pick up on their own. It's essentially the same thing. So those are just 3 different ways that we can do the working on it. And now I feel like I'm right on time. Like I've got about 15 minutes left, and I've got just a few slides left here. So I'm really pleased with how things are going. I hope you're enjoying this, but we're going to move on to the consolidation portion of problem solving. So these are just different ways. Again, there are a slew of ways to consolidate student learning, and even if you just Googled it, I'm sure you'd find more. These were just a few that I came up with. So just the traditional manner here. So, we can ask 3 or 4 key questions as a whole group, or even just having students do it in pairs. Maybe, and you're just asking questions and then providing feedback and answer that's really going to promote dialogue when they're speaking here. Round robin is another one, so I put, Robin Hood and Batman, but anyways, it's probably not the Robin they were thinking of, but each student in the group of 4 is given a piece of paper. And when the teacher says go, they're going to neatly write down one thing that they learned in the class. After about 30 seconds, they're going to pass the paper to the next student. And this process is repeated 3 or 4 times, as many people as there are in the group. And then what will happen is you're going to take up some results as a class, and students can add to their list if there's ones they really like. But then what they're going to do is they're going to take some of the key learnings or key topics covered and reflect on it or write about it in their journal. So they've got, from their group of 4, they've got 4 ideas already that people felt were the most valuable or things to remember or going away with. So that's just a different way to do it. One of my favorites is the gallery walk, and I always think of a picture. I used to have my kids go around and take a picture of another person's student work as they reflect on it. And what I did with this one too, I actually would have them, if we had iPads, I would have them actually take a picture and then use some apps and actually record their voice over it and have a discussion about it. So I thought it's another great way. But students are given an opportunity to walk around and look at other students' work. And what they can do is take a sticky note and ask any questions that they might have, or they can give feedback. But it's important that we model this and we talk to students about what the feedback might be and what it might look like so that they know what to expect. Because if we just have them give feedback, you're going to hear like, I used the same numbers too, or I really like how you answered it, and the feedback really isn't pushing or thinking or going to move them forward if they're just all saying that they like it. So let them model this and talk about this. Another way we could consolidate our lesson is either have them write a headline in a newspaper or a tweet. So students can individually or in small groups write a tweet about the key learning from the lesson. So just so you know is that a tweet is 140 characters or less, so it's really brief. And you can also kind of emphasize or come up with creative hashtags. So, and it'll be just a way to remind or trigger the mind. So what I would do is I'd have my learning goals posted on chart paper and I would do it for the whole unit. It would keep me in line as to where I'm going for the unit, but then during portions of the unit, I would put the tweets around it, or I would have class hashtags for it so that we can remember. So maybe if we were doing something on mean, mode, and median, not that it's a really creative hashtag, but it might just be the hashtag mode is the most, or hashtag median middle, like whatever it is. I'm just throwing that out there. Another model that's used a lot, and then I used it a lot in my intermediate classroom, is the Frere model. And sometimes I used it just when we were talking about new vocabulary, and sometimes it was just new concepts, and maybe it's not definition, maybe it's a strategy or something like that. But the Frere model is I'd have students kind of work on it for a concept at the end of the class, and they would just kind of complete these sections. So what's the definition or the main idea of the new learning? Give me what are some of the characteristics, or draw a picture of it. What are some examples, and what are some non-examples? And the non-examples are really, really important, especially at this level. So if I'm going to use Explain Everything in a gallery walk, what I might do is have the students take a picture. So with Explain Everything, you can take pictures, insert video, you can draw on it, and it records their voice. So I might have them pick another group, and just one group, and take a picture of it, and then have a discussion about maybe even something like my favorite no, like about what things were done really well or what strategies you liked about it. So they would record their thinking, and with this picture they now can annotate it, so they can draw on it and highlight the parts that they really, really like. And I'll probably have examples of that in my session on April 26th. And I feel like I'm dropping that way too much, so I'm going to stop talking about my session, but using it is a lot of fun. And just other things that I don't have on here is even just bump it up. Very similar to my favorite no, it could also be used as a consolidation. So just highlighting things that you like, but let's talk about it in a little bit deeper way. So, so those are kind of the three parts of the lesson plan when we are doing problem solving, but I know that there's a variety of problem solving frameworks out there, and I think that they're really good. If you find one that works for you and your students, then that's great. And right here we've got cubes, give me 5, just a strategy in general, like understand the problem, devise a plan, carry out the plan, check and extend. Like that's very, very vague. And then write. So sometimes kids need this. Sometimes students need a procedure of where to start. But one thing I ask when you are doing any sort of problem-solving framework is we make sure that we are marking what the students or not marking, but when we do assess, we aren't penalizing them for not using the strategy, because some kids don't need a framework to solve a problem effectively. Yeah, there's grass, ice, star, idea. There's so many out there. Like I'm sure that if you were to just go on a Pinterest, there would be a ton that come up. Cubes, yeah, it's a good one. Like there's so many out there, and I think it's just finding what works for you and your students. But some students truly need a plan like this to get started, and just as others don't. So I just was going to ask if there's a specific framework that you use in your school or your board, and if you wanted to just put that in the chat just right before we wrap up here. I have just a little bit on technology, and then we're done. So there any specific problem-solving strategies that you use? Four squares. So I know I need to know showing your work and doesn't make sense. I like that. Yeah, OTs would be open to seeing so many. Yeah, I like to do that too. So there's lots there. So understand the problem, make a plan, carry out, and check your work. So that's much like the one we saw at the bottom here on this last slide. Understand the problem, pick a plan, carry it out, check. Okay, so just my last slide here before I finish up is just technology. And there are a lot of ways to utilize technology. And I've got a big push on when we're using technology in the class. I don't emphasize a lot of drill for skill or what we call consumption apps. I do a lot of creative apps in math class, and it's not to say it's the only apps to use. It's just I really like to make the most of my classes, and I like it to be kind of in line with my philosophies, and I believe in problem solving, so these tools really help that, and it just kind of puts a different spin on it. So this one here with the circle and the triangle is for education. Now, it was one of the first ones that I started using, and it's really changed because they've changed the way the class is set up and the space. So it's good, it's free, but there is a premium part that you can pay for too, so they try to get you in that sense. This one here is Explain Everything, and it has a fee. It's about $3, or at least it was $3 for the app, but you can save it. You can save and share very easily. So you can add it to a Dropbox, you can add it to Google Drive, you can add it to OneDrive for business. So there's lots of ways that you can share with this one. Again, the tools are very similar. I think it doesn't matter which one you're using. It's, again, both. So Explain Everything, this one's Doodlecast Pro, and Educations are all what we call recordable interactive whiteboards on the iPad. Explain Everything is one that's good on the iPad and Android devices. EduCreations has an option for a website. So if you have a touch screen device, like we have Surfaces in our board, you could use www.educreations.com. And then one that I'm starting to use is OneNote, and it's just a new one that I'm starting to explore in. Again, this is if you're a Microsoft board or an Office 365. OneNote has similar idea where you can record what you're saying, and there's the writing tool or feature with OneNote. These two down here are they're ones where you take pictures and have students talk over it. So this one here is PhotoBabble and Audio Boom, and both of them you can take the picture, post it, and have students leave comments or like almost like little voice clips to it. And then there's another one too. I can see the image of it, but I can't remember the name. But again, they really do talk about. There's that idea where it's VoiceThread. That's the other one. And the VoiceThread actually allows the class to enter it, and they can hear each other as you can type or whatever as well. So they're just some really, really, really neat tools. Okay. So this one here is PhotoBabble with the F, so Photobabble. So I'll just put in the chat here. And the other one is Audio Boom. Again, you can take a picture, press a button, and students record their thinking on it. If you're interested in any of these apps, just look me up. I've got a session coming up, so I can talk a little bit more about it. And the PhotoBabble one, actually, you have to look, if it's iPad, then you have to look in the, I think it's iPod or iPhone only portion. And this one here is Doodlecast Pro. Same idea as an interactive recordable whiteboard. There's a fee with it, but it's pretty good too. And will a list of the others be provided? I'm not sure what you mean by that specifically. But that being said, that brings me to the end of my session, the tech tools. These 6 tools are listed here, and if you're interested in more, just feel free to come to my session if you're available, and if not, then there'll be a past recording posted. So just at the end of my session, I just ask if you have any questions, comments, or next steps, but thank you so much for listening to me tonight and staying right to the end. I'm really appreciative, and I had a lot of fun, and I'm glad I made it to the end. Again, feel free to follow me on Twitter, at CLake04. I'll follow back. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a really good night.
Crystal had just mentioned that if you have any follow-up questions, just as we're closing up, feel free to put them in the chat. I've got a couple things to do just to finish up here tonight. Now, thank you very much, Crystal, for a lot of great discussion about problem solving in math. I think by the looks of the chat, people got some good ideas and are grateful for all the sharing that you did. So thank you very much. In terms of feedback for Crystal and for OTF, there's a link right here on your screen, and I'm also going to put it in the chat. The link on the screen is active, but it's also in the chat, and if you complete this link, this will take you to a feedback survey. You also get the feedback survey by default. When you close out of Blackboard Collaborate, it will automatically open in a window in your browser. It just takes a couple of minutes to do it, and you may notice right here on the screen that after you do your feedback, there's an option to print out a webinar certificate, but they're only available for 48 hours after the feedback survey is completed. So just so you know that. There's lots of great OTF Connect sessions that are coming up. This is a link here. It's also clickable, and it's also in the chat, and this will take you to the calendar with upcoming sessions. And here's a few in the next 2 weeks. So to the end of April, as you probably know, sessions run Mondays to Thursdays, and there's some great ones coming up. And then they run through May, and then they're finished. So June, July, and August are holidays, and we're already starting to do some planning for next year. You may be aware that there is a Ministry of Education $450 subsidy through OTF for teachers who are taking AQ courses in math or technology. So there's a link there on the screen, which is not active, but I'm just going to go and grab it and put it in the chat as well. Here it comes. There we go. There's the link to the information about the subsidy. So I am going to stop the recording there. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the session tonight and all of your really valuable input, questions, and responses. And especially, Crystal, thank you so much for running a great session. And hey, it was on time. It was perfectly well timed tonight. Excellent.